Hello, good morning, all.
Good
Good
morning.
morning. Welcome to another edition of KSUM Meet the Leader series. I request all the audience here, the participants here, to kind of just raise your hand or type in hi if you could hear me, please. If you're audible, please respond in the chat. Yeah. Thanks, Mohammed, and thanks for thanks. So
Yeah, I think Dhanaj just left due to some internet issues. So I think he will be joining soon. Okay, Manish.
Yeah, should I start?
No.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting. We're doing the session on remote and what's happening, and internet issues are becoming more and more common.
Perfect. Yes, that's why. So okay. Calling. I'll be calling Dhanaj over the phone. Welcome all participants for joining the next edition of Meet the Leader. We have Mr. Maneesh Sharma from Manish Sharma from GitHub. He's a country manager. So, Manish Sharma is the country manager for GitHub in India, where he leads the company's growth and operations with over 22 years of experience under his belt. He is passionate about technology innovations and software products from India. Prior to joining GitHub, he was responsible for driving Adobe's strategy, business operations, and partner ecosystem in India. He has also run the platform business at SAP India as the head of products and solutions, and was involved with the developer communities during his stint with Sun Microsystems. An avid reader, in 2005, Manish founded India's first online book library, bookmeabook.com. To keep the passion of reading books alive in people from all walks of life, Manish holds an MBA degree from IIM Bangalore and a BE in Electronics and Communication from NIT Surat. Manish lives in Delhi and spare his time. He enjoys learning to play his guitar collections, playing retro video games. And thank you, Manish. Thank you, and welcome to our Meet the Leader session.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. You're too kind. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here amongst you. Uh, when I was invited for this session, the topic was quite interesting. It was about the pandemic, the impact, and how startups and student communities and developer communities are coping with the remote world. And it's interesting that we had challenges connecting. It just goes to show what everybody is going through. The three words that are used, or three phrases which are used the most these days is, can you see me now? Can you see my screen? And I think you're on mute. So this is the new world that everybody has gotten into. So I think over the next, I would say 20 minutes, I wanted to have a quick set of slides. Let me just move my slides. Yes. So I'll just talk through a few of my thoughts of what I am seeing in the ecosystem in the world. And then I will open it up, to anything that you would want to ask. I will be happy to share what I am seeing and hearing, and also whatever I've seen through my experiences in the field. I hope that's okay with everybody.
Perfect.
Great.
Sorry, I had to drop in between. I mean, again, unstable net and unstable network issue.
No problem. That's the new normal. So it's all great. So that's the beauty of it, right? If we were doing the same thing last year, everybody would be, sort of very apologetic of where we're sitting, internet issues. We will be worried about how we're dressed. I think
Exactly.
all of this has become very normal now. Even customers are pretty comfortable, having sessions with, their vendors, their partners, and hearing noise in the background, children coming in. So that's a new normal that's coming out.
Exactly. So again, Startup Mission has been doing this from the very beginning. Since the lockdown, we had the first session in March 26th. So I mean, it's interesting to see how the sessions also evolved. Like initially, we all kind of were hiccuping in between. We were all tense. Now, I mean, the way it evolved is also amazing. And thanks for being appreciative and thanks for being understanding of this, Manish. And just a word to the audience here. You can ask the questions directly at the end. The last 10 minutes, we'll be opening up the session for asking the question directly. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, you can put it in the questions tab. After Manish, this is presentation, I'll be posing those questions to Manish. So we'll be curating some questions and posing to Manish. And then towards the last 10 minutes, the floor will be open for all. Is that fine, Manish?
Yep, that's absolutely fine.
Okay. So over to you. Sorry.
Thanks. So as I was saying, this is a new normal. I'll talk through the world that is changing and the breakdowns and breakthroughs that we're experiencing. So just like the introduction, I've been in the tech industry for over 22 years. I've seen transformations, I've seen ups and downs, but one thing is constant. There's always been an opportunity for the tech ecosystem to take the entire world to the next stage. I would say that I started off in the tech world in the last century. So you can imagine how old I am. And that's when the world was going through the Y2K bug. Everybody is talking about a meltdown of technology. So we went through that. I had my fair share of working in startups, both good and bad, ups and downs. I saw the first dot-com crash in late 2001, early 2002, and there have been many such ups and downs, but nothing as unique as the pandemic because it affects everybody globally. I think it's fundamentally changing what everybody is going through. We're all used to interacting with each other. I would have loved to be in Kerala with all of you in a room discussing, looking at each other, having a conversation, exchanging business cards. So that's one of the most social thing that we do. But as we go about in our daily lives, whether we are as social family or in the professional world or even in the education world, we would be interacting with each other. We would be interacting with systems, processes, and products in the real world, in the physical world. The pandemic has actually obviously forced everything to change, and we're already 4 months into it, so you know what I'm talking about. Everything is now remote. Literally everything is becoming remote, and for technology it is quite easy, but for a lot of other businesses it is something that they're dealing with. We're now, I'm sure all of you are looking at fatigue of remote webinars and remote sessions. So virtual events have become a big thing. Not only does it save cost, but it also is a very scalable thing. But in all walks of life, whether we're talking about shopping, whether we're talking about medicine, healthcare, even education, right? Everything is becoming remote, and it is sort of redefining how we engage. And all of these things are not new. Let's take some of them. Remote learning. Right? Let me give you an example. I was, in a startup a couple of years back, and this is not so far long ago. This is 2013, 2014. We had a platform which was all about remote learning, and we used to go to educational institutions, colleges, auxiliary education like tech skilling, coding, and we used to tell them that remote learning is going to become big. You should look at doing live virtual sessions with your students to be able to scale. And nobody used to take us seriously, right? Everybody used to say, oh yeah, it's nice to have, but I think I'm fine scaling the business as we do. But fast forward to today. Was there a question? No. So I'm saying fast forward to today, almost everybody is doing remote learning. And the same is true for remote selling as well. So for those of you who are running B2B SaaS companies, I'm sure you are used to the model of inside sales or having a remote sales engagement with your customers. So the only thing is the pandemic has actually caught everybody unaware, and it is accelerating the way we engage in all walks of life. And this is truly becoming a new normal. Everybody has a prediction, right? I'm sure you're reading news articles, you're looking at webinars like the one that I'm doing, or listening to podcasts where everybody is talking about, a new normal, right? What's going to be the success criterias? It's a catastrophe out there. Funding is an issue. Customers are not buying. So there's a lot of news, positive and negative, that is definitely coming at you. So when I was having a conversation with Prajit on what the session should be, I was thinking about the situations that I've been through in startups and even in large organizations. And this is a cliche, but I thought I will use it. When life gives you lemon, think about making a lemonade. And it's all about opportunity, right? What we're going through, everything is getting redefined, and it gives you an opportunity to rethink not only the way you are engaging with each other, but the new applications, the new companies, the new business models that are going to evolve over the next few months and few years as well. I really like this magazine cover, and which is why I used it. Yes, the headline does say the business of survival, but what I really liked is that leopard and with those spots. And I'm sure you've heard of the saying, leopard changes its spots to adapt. I think that's what businesses are going through as well. If you look at companies in India, many of the chemical or pharma manufacturers are suddenly making hand sanitizers. A lot of the shoe companies or apparel companies are making masks. So everybody is sort of adapting to what the market is requiring. And this will reshape how all other businesses look at what their core offering is in the market. And once we get into the Q&A, I would love to hear what many of you are doing in your startups and how you're transforming. I was talking to a startup a couple of weeks back, and they had actually made so the product that they were taking to market over the last 2 years was a video analytics platform. They used to sell it to retailers, and what it basically does is when a customer walks into your store, it sort of tracks the behavior of different customers, what shelves they go to, how they traverse through the supermarket, and it gives you video analytics. So that was the core offering. And as soon as the pandemic hit, they tweaked their algorithm to take that same solution to corporates and position it as a video analytics that can actually spot increased level of temperatures, and also look at whether social distancing is being observed or not. So that was a very quick pivot by the startup to look at the opportunity that is there, what they were offering, and how they could combine these two to actually have a quick go to market. I think you'll see this a lot more on how we engage. The traditional models of acquiring customers. So, for example, those of you who are doing B2B startups, one of the most basic lead gen activity used to be going into marketing events, right? Physical events, putting up a booth. Now, all of that is not going to happen, and you cannot replicate that same experience in a virtual world as well. Right? Just by putting up a digital kiosk, people are not going to walk up into the digital kiosk and engage with you. So you have to start thinking through, how will you change your B2B marketing activities to engage with your customers? Right? And I think that's the beauty of what's happening. I see the pandemic as a positive force right now. I'm sure the vaccine will come soon, but this will actually force all of us to innovate, whether it is in terms of technology, it's in terms of business models, or just how we engage with each other. One second, I'm having an issue sitting next. This is one, I was looking at the positive. This is one great positive. Companies all over the world are moving to a work from home culture. To give you an example, GitHub has always been a remote first. So this pandemic was forcing us to work from home was nothing new. For the last 12, 13 years, we have always been a remote company. So all of the 2,000 employees that GitHub have are all remote. We do not have large offices or large engineering centers where we come into office and work. The systems, the processes have always been enabled for remote. And the fact that the pandemic is actually forcing a lot of companies to go remote, it's actually going to open up a very different job market as well. And we're already seeing it. So those of you who are, students are looking at, what the job scene is going to be like, it's really going to be, where is the talent available? Since you're able to collaborate remotely from anywhere, you would be able to get a job anywhere as well, right? So watch this space. I have a prediction that over the next 12 to 18 months, the whole, the talent landscape and engaging with jobs is significantly going to change because, as they say, location has been unlocked by what's going on. Let me draw a parallel to what open source is, right? And this is very interesting. I'm sure you know that 80 to 90% of code that all of you are using or any company that is writing code uses, 80 to 90% of it is open source, right? You only build on top of it. This could be in the form of raw source code that you use, or it could be libraries that you've been using. And when you start importing libraries into any code that you're writing, you are actually, bringing on board a large remote distributed team into your project. And that's what open source is. So if you put, pandemic on one side, open source over the last so many decades, the reason it has thrived is because it is a distributed community. You could have somebody working on, Linux code, Linux kernel from anywhere in the world, and they're collaborating, right? So this is the epitome of remote distributed work. Usually, whenever anybody thinks about code or software development, they think about, an individual sitting in one corner, with multiple screens or 2, 3 laptops and hacking away on code. But in actuality, the way it really works in the software world is that everybody's connected, right? It is a connected community. You don't write software all on your own. You're actually collaborating with the community, the developers from all across the world. And this, in my view, sort of really does highlight how remote work and remote engagement from a software perspective has thrived. And given where we are, it's only going to increase. Think of it this way. The world is going through a firmware upgrade, right? Everything is getting redefined, and technology is going to lead this firmware upgrade for the world in defining what the new future is going to be. I wanted to show all of you this. This is GitHub's representation of open source code commits coming from different parts of the world. It's great to see India shining bright as well. The basic tenet of this is you have collaboration on open source code coming in from all corners of the world, right? And this is how remote collaboration and remote work really, really, really works. So even for students, as you think through, what should I engage with? How should I keep myself abreast? I think the perfect thing to do is to participate in open source projects. It not only gives you a new learning, but it is exposing you to real world problems, real world products, platforms, and architectures that enterprises use. There's no better learning than working on open source code. And when I say working on open source, it's actually contributing back or maintaining, fixing bugs, or even just helping maintain documentations in open source projects. That's how you will really be able to learn something new. I thought I'll talk a little bit about what enterprises are also going through. Many of you startups are just starting off, but there are larger organizations who are going through a transformation themselves. Technology, software developers are really driving innovation in each of these organizations. Open source is definitely a part of their supply chain. And more importantly, cloud is actually driving a lot more innovation and cycles. One of the things that has been sort of laid bare in this pandemic is how unprepared many organizations were to deal with it, especially from a tech perspective. Everybody talks about digital transformation and accelerating innovation, et cetera, et cetera. But even basic access to applications, access to tools were actually crippled. And I'm not talking about SMB customers, I'm talking about large, very large enterprise customers. So I think over the next few months and years, you will see a rapid acceleration of cloud applications. Uh, there was a report recently done where they're saying that by 2025, we will have 50 million new applications created, born on the cloud, and enabled on the cloud. Right. So as systems and processes get reimagined, we will see an acceleration towards cloud as well. And this is an opportunity for all of you, right? Whether you are software developers, whether you're students in the tech domain, or even companies that are starting off to cater to B2B or B2C, customers and organizations are going to start looking at the landscape. They're going to looking at their processes from anew, and it gives an opportunity for everybody to be a part of this cycle. I'm sure you know GitHub. I thought I'll just put this in there. GitHub is actually enabling a lot of this acceleration of applications, being platform neutral, language neutral, cloud neutral. In fact, over the last 4 months, I can tell you that it's never been a dull day. It's been interesting engaging with communities like yourself, customers, developers, influencers, on how they have started to work a lot more on GitHub to do their work, whether it is collaborating remotely or even doing internships. So we have a lot of students starting to do internships on the platform because suddenly you have organizations who are able to tap into a global pool, as I was talking about on GitHub. Excuse me. And that's what GitHub is. GitHub is the world's largest platform, and we are enabling a lot of this application development, innovation, collaboration on the platform itself. And India is at the center of it. So in the previous slide I showed quickly, we have more than 50 million developers globally. But if I talk about India, we are the third largest. So the developer community on a base of 50 million is the third largest, which just goes to show, how many developers are actually contributing to open source or collaborating on projects. And we're seeing a tremendous growth every year on the platform, whether it is in terms of, the user growth or even contribution to open software. People from India, developers from India are working on a lot of open source code and innovating on top of it. And I'm sure many of you are part of that ecosystem as well. Right. Last slide, because I want to spend more time in talking to all of you. For those of you who are students and in college, you should look at GitHub Education. We have something what we call as a developer pack, which has 100 tools with stuff like AWS, Azure, GitKraken, Stripe, and many other tools that are available for free for students. And this is a great way to learn and to engage, to quote unquote create your profile as you step out into the job market, whether you're going to be working in startups or enterprises. Having that experience of multiple projects under your belt or internships, right? It's really going to be useful for you. We keep doing a lot of these workshops specifically for India. I would urge you to be a part of it. And all of this is about how do we enable the next generation of software developers to be able to contribute to the tech world. So that was a quick talk that I just wanted to give. I know it is a little abstract, but that's the way the world is today. But I want to spend more time in talking to all of you and answering any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Manish. And the presentation was awesome. Like you set the context perfectly. Manish, I'm audible?
Yes, you are. I'm just trying to stop my screen. Sorry.
Okay, so you almost touched upon all kind of topics, but I would love to kind of touch on two threads. One is on how you see the enterprise tech industry is going to shape, because you are one industry which support the enterprise tech, right? So how do you envision that particular sector to kind of shape in future? And also, since you already spoke about the MLH fellowship, I think the first cohort just launched, right, this year. So a bit more details on the MLH fellowship also would be interesting for the students as well.
Sure, sure. Um, so I have lots of views on the question that you asked about enterprise. If you look at what's been happening in the enterprise landscape, there have been three different types of moves to the cloud. Cloud is inevitable, right? And inevitable. Every application, every workload is going to move to the cloud. So the first phase was about just compute moving to the cloud, where you had applications, where you had things like email servers that were on premise, and it just made sense to move it to the cloud. So that was phase one. Phase two was all about enterprises starting to adapt SaaS applications, whether it is ERP or HR or CRM. So they went in for putting up all of these SaaS applications, piecing them together so that you have your business processes automated. The third phase, which we are in now, is all applications are being reimagined and getting coded for being native to the cloud. So when we think about what's going on right now, what's going to accelerate, I think it is the need for new products, new applications that are being reimagined for being enabled in the real world on cloud, mobile first, right? With having a lot of AI embedded into it. Given that the processes of the physical world are going to change, even after the vaccine comes in, the process is definitely going to change, because every business wants to be prepared for the next pandemic or calamity or disaster that might happen. And because of this, there is a huge opportunity for all companies and software developers to create this new world. I like to make this statement: every company in the world is becoming a software company. So it's not only tech companies like all of us, but manufacturing companies, automobile companies, chemical companies, pharma companies. They're all becoming software companies. Software is a core part of every business today, and that's the opportunity. That's the opportunity for tech that I see. Um, that was your first question. The second question, you talked about the internship. So I think we also took a view that students are sort of going through this phase where they're having challenges getting internships, being able to travel to organizations that had offered them internships. Many got their internships cancelled. So we did launch something called the GitHub Fellowship in partnership with Facebook, Royal Bank of Canada, and a couple of other organizations, where we've paired mentors with different students. The first cohort, as you said, got launched recently, and I can tell you there was a very large participation from India. Many students from India are part of this. Um, we will be doing a lot more of this. Now that we have launched in India, we're looking at doing something that is India specific as well over the next few months, where we will partner with tech companies and local companies here and provide this sort of experience for a lot more students in India. Because given that everybody is remote, this just gives an opportunity to do it at a larger scale than we were able to do earlier.
Amazing. Uh, and regarding the software being the inseparable part, I completely agree on that, because becoming too prominent and it's inseparable in all the sectors. So I'll just pose one question from the questions tab entered by the participants here. To other participants, please type in your questions in the questions tab so I can kind of curate and post it to Manish. So one question is regarding the GitHub paid platform. So he was asking why someone should use the paid platform when he can actually host it for free in privately in a tier 4 big bucket kind of things. So I mean, what's your take on that?
So there are good questions. So I'm sure you saw a couple of announcements that we made in April, where we made private repositories for free. We also reduced the cloud plan subscription from $9 to $4. But the other interesting thing, which a lot of people don't know about, is that GitHub also has an on-premise version. So I saw a lot of questions about data and data access, etc. Many enterprises, even in India, use GitHub Enterprise Server, which is think of it like a private walled garden, which you can deploy either on premise or even in your private cloud. The beauty of it is that it is connected to github.com through a secure connection. So the reason GitHub is because of the community and the open source projects that live on GitHub. So when you're looking at writing an auth module, you don't start from scratch. You will go out and look at projects that are already available and start using it. And having this connection to the community on github.com is actually what accelerates your software development lifecycle. Over the last few months, we've also released a lot of features that are integral to software development from a security perspective. So how do you do dependency maps? How do you do token scanning? How do you do CVE discovery? And not only discovery, but how do you mitigate CVEs as they're discovered? So these are the features and benefits that you get when you're looking at GitHub and also the GitHub Server Plan.
Okay, perfect. So the other, I hope Adul got the answer for your question. You can actually raise your hand and ask directly if you have any follow-up questions on that. The other question is from Mr. Vivek. So he's asking, what do you think a bootstrapped startup is going to survive in post-pandemic world, or is being bootstrapped is going to be obsolete? And is there any particular support package for them from GitHub?
So I'll take the second question first. We are working on something for India, for startups. Stay tuned. Over the next few weeks, I'll be announcing something. We are conscious about providing access to all developers, all startups, so that they're able to innovate and take their tech force forward. That's the core of what GitHub is all about, as you know. Your second question on the bootstrap part, I think startups are always difficult. It's not only about the pandemic. It's always how are you being frugal? How are you being innovative? How are you engaging with the customers? I think if the fundamentals are right, there isn't an issue. Yes, in today's time, you have to be a lot more frugal than what you would have been in earlier times. It's not only about preserving costs, because what you would have done to acquire customers is a lot different today, right? So you have to be a lot more innovative on how you figure these things out. So it'll be challenging, but I think it is not impossible. As I was mentioning earlier, I was part of a dot-com crash way back in 2001. While we wrapped up our startup and I went to work at Sun Microsystems, many of my other friends, created another startup and they continued working on it. So there's always an opportunity that comes up for startups, and I would say, keep at it. Persistence is the most important thing.
Okay, since I have a follow-up question on that, since it's more personal than on GitHub, I guess. So the question specifically by Mohammed is about starting a service-oriented technology. What is your advice in starting a service-oriented technology startup? But I'll broaden it a bit and ask, what is your advice for someone actually starting up a startup, and how was your journey as a founder? I mean, how you start a startup? That's broadly the question.
Interesting question, and that's a very, very long and philosophical discussion as well. I think there are a couple of different ways of looking at it. One way is you look at a problem that exists in the real world and figure out a way of solving that problem, right? It could be unique or it could be a different way of solving that problem. But if you come up with it, there is always a market. So when you're starting off, always think about, what problem are you solving? It's not about, a very nice technology that you've created or something exciting that you love to do. That's why you're starting off. That's part of it. The other part should always be, what problem are you solving and who are you solving it for. If you have that clarity, perfect. Right? That's the most important thing. And there is a lot of opportunity that exists today for startups, and it is no longer a social taboo either. I would say that you should definitely in your careers work in startups, have that experience, because it gives you an accelerated learning curve. When I was part of a startup way back in, as I said, last century, I always used to get questions, why am I doing a startup? Didn't I get a job in one of the large service companies? But it was not about that. It was about creating something that can be taken to market, can be loved by customers. I'm a software product guy. I love looking at software from a product perspective. And that's what we were trying to make. I think Mohammed had that question about services. The services is also going out and solving a problem, right? Service companies will always exist. It is definitely a way to bootstrap and kickstart your startup, because you have that intellectual capital that is available with you to go and solve problems for customers. The only difference between a services startup and a product startup would be scale. A service startup is dependent on human capital to scale, whereas if you're making a product, whether it is software as a service or making different algorithms, you actually depend on technology to scale. So you would be able to reach out to a far more number of customers when you're doing a product-led startup versus what you would do in a services-led startup. There is value in both, right? I have a lot of my friends who are running their own services companies, whether it is in application development, whether it is in design or commerce related stuff. There is definitely an opportunity there, but it boils down to what you think you can offer and take to market. I will also point out there that I have a couple of other friends who started off with services, worked a lot with customers, and based on that experience, they created products which they then took to market again, right? By engaging from a services perspective, it ensured that they had a steady revenue coming into the company to make sure that they're able to move forward with whatever R&D that they were doing. So those are the considerations that I would say that you take into account when you're thinking this through. I hope I answered
Just
you.
yeah, add on to what Mohammed asked. So he was actually mentioning about some startups like Zomato. On that line, what is your view on replicating a certain model which is successful in developed countries and kind of using it in countries like India, or intrinsically developing a new thing? I mean, how do you think that particular technology is mature enough to replicate in India or markets like India? Is there any thumb rule or is there any advice you have?
Yeah. So again, this might sound cliched, but no idea is unique. In today's hyper-connected world, an idea can be copied from anywhere. It's all about innovation. It's about that spark, but it boils down to execution. There have been a lot of models that have been picked up from different countries, not only the US but many countries, and tried out in India and haven't worked because the demographics are different, the market is unique, the distribution models in India is unique, right? So it's about how do you match that idea to execution, to localizing it to what India has to offer, because definitely it is unique. If you look at the uniqueness of India in terms of price, in terms of reach, also in terms of diversity, right? Every geography in India is different. The way customers behave, sentiments, everything is different, right? So I think looking at ideas is good, but figuring out how you can make that as a differentiator for yourself so that you provide stickiness to your customers and localize it to the country, I think it's the most important thing. And technology is sort of like a leveler. Everybody is starting to use technology as a differentiator to whatever startup or service or offering that they're creating. And you will see a lot more automation and a lot more tech related ideas coming up. And I'm sure you're already seeing it. Some of you are part of it in the startups that you've created. But over the last, if you just take a look at the last 3 years, right, there's been a disruption in literally every segment in India, where born digital companies are creating business models and taking to market. Many of them are coming out of India as well. If you look at education itself, while it is booming, we've always had a view of tech enabling education from India. And since I've been part of that ecosystem because of the startup that I was doing, I can tell you that there are a lot of new models that would come up, especially from India, because of the volume that exists here. We're able to solve the volume problems using tech, which is, I think, unique to India, which is how a lot of the other countries will look at, especially from a SaaS perspective. If you look at the number of product companies, SaaS companies that are coming out of India, which are now being taken global, because it's a level playing field. You're able to offer the service as a SaaS service, so you don't really need a large number of teams in different countries to install and support. You're also able to sell online using marketing and sales channels. So you will see a lot of these companies coming out of India and going global and being unique as well. I hope I answered that question.
I think Dhanaj have left the call. So we have a couple of people is ready to ask questions directly, Manish.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Happy to answer.
Thank you. So we have Fouth SVP. Uh, Siddharth or Arya, please provide his mic. Yeah.
Hi, Paul.
Hello, Fouth. He's just joining. I think Siddharth. Yeah. Oh, okay. Hi, Fouth.
Hi.
Yeah. Yeah, you can ask question directly, please. Yeah, Fouth, you are on online. I think he has some internet issues. How? Hmm. Okay. So Siddharth, ask him to post his questions in the chat box. So please provide mic to Sawad MB. Yeah. Hello, Sawad. Sawad, you are all live now. Am I audible? Please unmute. Yeah. You can ask your question directly to Manish.
Hi, Sawat. If people are having a problem with the mic, they can always write their questions in the chat. I can start answering. So
Yes.
I see a question
So
from Benel.
we
We secure our code while sharing with others remote developers. So Benel, it depends on what kind of project you're doing. If you are doing open source projects, even in private repositories, it's governed by the license that you use, whether it is the MIT license or the GNU public license. I'm sure you understand the different types of open source licenses that there are. The second is if you are doing a specific project with a remote organization or a remote developer, you will always have an NDA or a contract in place before you start off your project. And that's what would govern how you secure your code. From a tech perspective, obviously, there are lots of features that are available in the platform, how you share your private repositories, how you give access to specific code, etc. So it's a mix of license, the agreement or contract that you would sign with the organization or developer team, and technology.
right. So we have another question from Sadish. You are seeing the questions tab, right? Sadish?
Sorry?
So as per the data available with GitHub, which tech,
I see
which
that. The data available with
technology, yeah.
Oh, okay. So I would say, Sarish, to be honest with you, Sarish, it's across segments. Definitely, there is a spike in creating more applications around education and healthcare. There are lots of COVID-related projects that are being collaborated on, but I think it is across segments
Right.
purely because companies are now all working from home, whether there are end organizations or even system integrators, everybody is remote. We've seen a spike in usage from developers across the board, not specific to any sector, because it's sector agnostic. It's just providing a platform for being remote engagement.
Hi, Manish. Sorry, I got lost in between again.
No problem. We're answering questions
So,
from.
yeah, I hope. So I want. There are a few questions again back from GitHub. I hope Vignesh asked you about the sectors, right? The last question was on sectors.
I did. I
Was
just.
it? Okay. So the next is regarding. Okay. So again, starting up a company. What do you think the scope of starting up a company based on exploiting present pandemic scenario? Uh, so,
I didn't get
is
that
it,
question. Tanush, can you repeat that, please?
so again, the scope of starting up a company based on the current situation, especially the pandemic situation, and also apps like TikTok, where since it's been banned. So, both the scenarios.
Lots of questions there. I think it's definitely not easy today because everything is, just the fact that you're remote, you're not able to interact with a lot of people. So finding, a team, co-founders is going to be the biggest challenge that people will have to solve for. I think, banning apps is a separate topic, but there are products and applications that are being created and released into the market almost every week. If you just think about TikTok, you always had YouTube. YouTube was always there. Instagram was always there, and then you had YouTube, TikTok come up. You will have a lot more application coming out because it's always about how can you provide something unique that the market wants. Right? And this will continue. It's not about the pandemic. It's about innovation. It's about availability of new tech, new AI and ML models that developers and startups like yourselves are starting to use. Uh, if you think about the B2B enterprise space, we've always had an ERP solution, a CRM solution, an HR solution. But still, every few months, we have a new company coming up. And they're becoming very laser focused. So in the HR space itself, for example, there will be a company that does only appraisal management, right? There would be something that just does payroll. I think hyper verticalization of specific segments in the enterprise space is also a very important trend that will lead to creation of new apps and new products. And since everything is in the cloud, it's very easy to stitch things together from a process perspective. And the same continues on the consumer side as well, right? Commerce is going to accelerate. You will see a lot more apps coming out, which are again hyper specialized for providing commerce experiences. And who knows, given where we are with this new normal and remote normal, there will be apps that sort of leverage the new psychology of remote for everybody.
Perfect. So, since we are almost into the last 5 minutes, let's take the questions directly, right? I will take one more question from here and then we'll go to raise the hand. Vignesh, can you please handle the raise the hand tab and allow people to get into us? So meanwhile, the last question from the questions curated here is the difference between GitHub and GitLab. So there is one student here. He is more of a programming enthusiastic. He want to know the difference between what GitHub does and GitLab does.
So GitHub is the world's largest developer platform with more than 50 million developers that provides a collaborative platform for everybody to contribute. And more than 90% of the world's open source projects exist on GitHub. The reason GitHub is because of that community of developers and that whole engagement that we have. GitLab is another company, another product that also uses the same framework of Git. As you know, Git is the open source framework within Linux that everybody has sort of built on top of. But it is a separate company. And I think purely from a community perspective, GitHub's focus is to work more with developers, work more with open source um, communities to help them collaborate. And the core differences actually would boil down to how platform agnostic and pluggable GitHub is, because the way we look at software development, it's the choice that we give to developers like yourself. You might want to bring in your own Jenkins framework, you might want to use GitHub Actions, or you might want to use some of AWS pipes, etc. So you can actually integrate whatever you want, and that's what's the power of GitHub that we provide to developers. So I see a question: how's the Git business model designed for developer platform and making revenue? So we do make our revenues from enterprises. So we have what we call as a GitHub enterprise that we take to organizations. So if you think of large companies like SAP, Adobe, Microsoft, Spotify, Netflix, Airbnb, they are all large enterprise customers of GitHub.
Excellent.
Yes, Siddharth. Please provide a mic to Prithvi Kaveti.
Yeah, I'm looking at a question from Prithvi, who was talking about, can you give us a brief idea of your processes? Good question. So by the way, do go to our blog. We've actually taken each function of GitHub and talked about how they've been doing remote work. I've also talked about it from an international perspective, how we've been doing it. But Prithvi, it actually boils down to how an organization is thinking about synchronous and asynchronous engagements and setting up processes for it. So what I mean to say is, when you're designing, let's say, your employee onboarding, when you're designing your finance processes, when you're designing your engineering processes,
Yes.
you design it independent of where the employee is. So the reason everybody is struggling is because it was designed for people in office.
Yes.
But if you have always thought of it, the employee can be anywhere. They could be at home, they could be in a hotel, they could be in office, they could be on a train, wherever they are. If the process is defined like that, it becomes easy. And from a culture perspective, it's important to understand synchronous and asynchronous communications. Because people work on their own time zones, people work on their own time frames. If people are working from home, they have other constraints on when they're available. So just because you see somebody is available on a calendar does not mean you put in an invite for a Zoom session or an Air Meet session, right? You really need to have a conversation. Are you available? Can I have a meeting and stuff like that? So it's a little bit of cultural thing as well. So we use all synchronous and asynchronous tools, but the most fundamental tool that we use for collaboration is GitHub itself. So all of you who are developers will understand that we use issues when we want to collaborate on specific topics and projects. We use dashboards, and we use a lot of Markdown for communicating in form of documents among the team. So the bottom line is, it's a mix of asynchronous and synchronous communication products.
Okay, Manish. Thank you. I'll go through the blog which you have mentioned also to get more info. But thanks a lot. It has been a nice session, Manish. Thank you.
Thank you, Prithvi.
Okay, thank you, Prithvi. Thank you so much. So Manish, so we have almost completed all the questions, and it's already 12 now. So, so shall we wind up?
Yeah,
Is it
I
okay?
think I hope it was useful. I know we were all over the place with so many questions, but I hope you found that 1 hour useful. I truly hope I was able to, you know, help you make use of this time by sharing my experiences and what I'm seeing in the field.
Yes, Manish, it's wonderful session. You have gone through all the aspects, student entrepreneurs, all the technology evangelists expected. So I think all the sessions, the points you have mentioned is benefited for our team working on the is pandemic times. So thank you so much on behalf of Kerala Startup Mission and all the founders from Kerala. So we'll look forward to work with you
Yeah,
soon. And
I actually, Vignesh, look forward to being there in person whenever this becomes normal, back to normal, and being with you. I wish you all the best in what you're doing. I think what you're doing with startups is truly amazing. I've always been passionate about the startup ecosystem. I've been passionate about innovation coming out of India. So I wish you all the best, and
Thank you.
I hope you make best use of the opportunity that presents itself.
Thank you so much, Manish. Thank you. Thanks again, once again. Thanks again for joining for the session. So, thanks, audience, for being here for this wonderful session. Thank you again. We'll connect to Manish offline. Okay. So,
Thank you.
signing out from here. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.